How's it going, everybody? My name is Alex, and a little while ago, as you may know, I had a discussion with Stephen Woodford and Rachel Oates on Stephen's channel about veganism. Link is, of course, in the description. Now, for me, this was an exploratory conversation in which I didn't really have a solid stance and was aiming principally to just simply discuss some interesting philosophical questions raised by the issue of meat eating. Since then, I've been doing a bit of reading and a lot of thinking, and the more I do, the more my sympathy for the philosophy of veganism grows.
Hello and welcome to another episode. So in this episode we're doing something very special. We're going to be actually watching Cosmic Skeptic's YouTube video that he came out with several months back, about 9 months ago, and it's a MeatEATER's case for veganism. And this video got a lot of people thinking, because Cosmic Skeptic came out of left field and really surprised a lot of people because it wasn't something that he was totally convinced in. And after this video, shortly after this video, he ended up going vegan because of the research that he did preparing this video. So I also have my good friend here, Ruben, and he is a meat eater. So he is watching this one, and he's on a vegan journey, but he's gonna learn. We're gonna actually watch this video live together, and we're gonna get a chance to get our reactions in real time.
Yeah, I'm really excited because I've heard a lot of good things about the reactions to his video. This will be my first time watching it. I'm just kind of looking to see what it is that everyone's so hyped up about. It's kind of probably seems where I feel like I can relate to where he's at, because he seems to have not been completely committed to it, and I think a lot of us are curious at that point.
I should state I'm still not a vegan, and perhaps that's because the debate in my mind has been almost purely philosophical rather than practical. But now, whenever I consider the future of my diet, I can't help but imagine that animal products will one day no longer be a component of it. Albert Camus, in The Myth of Sisyphus, wrote, "The principle can be established that for a man who does not cheat, what he believes to be true must determine his action." And it's in that vein that I realize that there can only be one of two outcomes for me. Either someone convinces me that the arguments I'm about to present are flawed, or at some point I'll just have to suck it up and join the growing trend of a herbivorous lifestyle.
He stops it right there, and he kind of talks about some things where it doesn't seem like he's like just hitting you in the face with anything that is unrealistic or something that you don't feel like you're just like I'm not on the same page as you. He's trying to just have a dialogue, he's trying to have a discussion, and then it's like, okay, well, at what point does the discussion lead into like practicalities? First, let's start with the discussion. And I mean, there's a great quote. I enjoyed it. It's like, I'm intrigued. Where are we going from here,
Yeah, and I feel like he has a certain set of principles, like even if you don't know much about him, you can tell that he really does his homework, and he has a certain principles, and he has a certain amount of beliefs, but he doesn't just believe them blindly. I feel like he really thinks about what he believes in, and he really wants to trust that what he believes in aligns with his own values. And if something doesn't quite align with his own values, I think he's ready to make those changes, to make sure that his beliefs his actions align with his values. You know what I mean? That's kind of like, I see him in that inner struggle of like, oh, these are my values that I hold so dear to me, and these are my actions and they're conflicting. So how do I make them not conflict? You know what I mean? That's kind of what I see.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting struggle. I'm sure it's going to be uncomfortable at certain points here in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now don't worry, my channel isn't turning into a veganism advocacy channel or anything, but I feel like the purpose of this channel is to discuss interesting philosophical topics, and this is one of the most important of them all. So I wanted to make a video presenting some, but certainly not all, of the arguments that are leading me to believe that every day of my life I commit an act so immoral that I can hardly bear to think about it, and see if any of you, by way of comment or response, can talk me out of it. So, with a distant hope that someone out there can stop me from fully succumbing to them, I, a current meat eater, present some arguments for veganism.
So I find this part really interesting because I think that he is saying that he is challenging anyone to find a single reason why he should be eating meat. But also I was also thinking about that challenge. Like, has anyone taken that challenge? What are some of the best arguments that people has used? And I was also thinking for myself, when I was looking for a reason to not to continue eating meat. I was searching for a reason. I couldn't find a good reason. So if you're watching my channel,
that's true.
If you're watching my channel right now, I want you to leave in the comments below some reasons why we should still be eating meat. If you could find a good reason, I'll hear you out. We'll have a conversation about it. I'll invite you on my channel. I'll do something, right? But for you, if you haven't watched this, right? What are you thinking? What are some things that you would say to him as a reason why he should still be eating meat before you hear his arguments? What would you say?
It's not like I have a strong argument for it. It's instead where I'm, and I don't know, maybe it's weak, but it's like I can't even come up with a strong enough argument for it. Where I'm almost looking for other people to help me out with that. Like, come on, like somebody else help me out, because as it is right now, they're just they're standing really flimsy right now. And that's kind of where I'm at. I think that says a lot. I think a lot of people are kind of like looking for somebody to like really find something to, stop this divide, because it's becoming like like this argument where it's not like whether or not you want to be right or wrong. At the end of the day, you know where you stand. It's like how you feel about it.
This, unlike other videos like it, is a purely philosophical and moral video. You won't find statistics about global warming or footage of slaughterhouses here. It's all brain-based, armchair moral philosophy, if you will. Secondly, I'm not doing a video like this because I'm some kind of animal lover. I do love animals, it's true, but don't think that you need to feel this way yourself in order to justify veganism. Peter Singer points out in his seminal Animal Liberation that you don't need to see yourself as some kind of lover of black people to see that racism is wrong. I hope that we can view this morally and reasonably rather than purely emotionally. That's why I won't try to win you over with footage of animals being mistreated or things like that, though believe me, that does exist and it's effective. With that said, here goes. Here we deal with argument number 1 in favour of meat eating. Humans are superior to other animals because of X, and therefore we can eat them. Yeah, few problems with that. Firstly, by what metric are we superior? Perhaps the only feasible answer to this is something along the lines of intelligence. Clearly, human beings possess a higher cognitive ability than, say, a chicken. But my question is this: what relevance does that hold to morality? Why should intelligence be the metric by which we measure moral worth? It's arbitrary. It means nothing in itself. Should we morally value human beings with higher intelligence over other humans with lower intelligence? I think not.
So what are your thoughts on name the trait?
I mean, there's so many ways to look at it, but everything just seems so morally arbitrary, whether you look at it as, eyesight, whether you look at it as speech, intelligence, there's still something different there that you think is like separating you from what feels right and wrong, and truth is, it's just like, it's so ethically weak, it's like, just because, we're a different species, it's like, yeah.
I also think he's partly saying that we're more similar than we are different. Like,
sure.
even if when you identify that difference you find out doesn't matter. Like, what does that matter? So it's more of a question of, what do we share in common, that makes it not okay to kill us, or not okay to kill someone, you know what I mean? Like, maybe I develop a connection with you, okay, that's one thing, but maybe it's the fact that you breathe, and you're living, and you have a family, and you can feel pain, and you can feel fear, and you can feel suffering. Maybe it's for those reasons that taking your life is not right, and those same reasons can be applied to cows, pigs, and chickens. You know what I mean? That they do feel the pain, or they do see, they have their own subjective view of reality, so like they're basically able to see, they have their own perception of what's going on.
It's an interesting argument, the name the trait argument, because you can try your hardest. You like truly try your hardest to find it, whatever it is that separates us from that animal kingdom.
This is a second argument in favour of meat eating. This, if you ask me, doesn't work either. Firstly, on the point of pain, let me bring up something that made my stomach turn when I first thought about it. In fact, of all the small things that came together to make me start thinking about veganism seriously, this may have been the most grotesque to me. Think about the fact that, as we've already said, an eagle has a much stronger eyesight than humans do. Likewise, dogs are much more sensitive to smell than we are, such that we can't even imagine what it must be like to experience smell as vividly and acutely as they do. Does it not seem reasonable that, given that other animals are more sense-driven creatures than we are, their capacity to feel pain actually far exceeds our own, just as their capacities for eyesight or smell do? It seems rational to think that this may well be the case. I said a moment ago that intelligence is an arbitrary metric by which to judge moral worth. The ability to feel pain, however, is not. It's a matter of fact, definitionally in fact, that pain infringes on well-being.
That's a great idea that was just put forth. I mean, as far as first, maybe a first timer, but again, coming from somebody who's just trying to take the philosophical arguments and wrap their head around it, it's a great, diving point. I was introduced to animals who actually felt emotional pain, and I'd seen some interesting things in certain experiments, but there's no doubt that that's a total new perspective as far as the capacity for suffering. If something can suffer, then what? I mean,
it's like if someone can suffer, and you can avoid it or not participate in it, then that's a good first step, right?
Sure.
But like if you could help end it, then that's a great second step. You know what I mean? Like a great second overarching goal, and that's where activism comes in.
The only way
is how to put an end to this.
It's terrible. I mean, honestly, the only way I want to suffer something to suffer for my food is because of passion. I mean, I want the chef to sweat it over it because they wanted to. I can't imagine a cow milking themselves is because of passion and they wanted to, this, woo, not in the same sense. That's the only kind of suffering I want in the food that I eat.
Yeah.
On to the next point, and this is about equality between humans and animals. Surely, you might argue, it's ridiculous to try to draw such an equality between humans and animals. There are quite easily detectable differences, both physically and cognitively, between them. So let's take a look at this claim. Firstly, it pays to remember that we are animals, not a distinct form of being. But secondly, and here's the more important point, I might just as easily say something like it's foolish to draw an equality between black people and white people because there are clearly identifiable physical and cultural differences between them. But this would completely miss the point. We don't condemn racism because all races are equal. They're not. They look different, they have different proportions, skin colors and eye shapes, and different cultures and different histories, different religions, different biology, and some data even suggests different IQ averages. But the whole point of racial justice is not to deny these differences, but to point out that these differences are completely irrelevant to determining whether or not someone deserves life and freedom. It's not about saying that there are no differences between us, but that despite our differences, we all have an equal moral worth. The same applies to differences in gender and social class, and arguably, species.
What an interesting thought. Fucking experiment. Another good one. I enjoyed it, man. Because it almost brought me to this point where I'm thinking about, God, what if, so what? If a meat eater eats a human, do they win? Is that how you win the argument? By saying, you know what? Fuck it. We're all equal. I'm going to start eating humans. And now it's a level point.
I don't know if it's about winning.
Right?
I don't know if it's about winning or losing. I think it's more about moral consistency.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. In a moral consistent world, it's
if you were eating babies, and then you were eating animal babies, then it's you're consistent.
Cool.
You're not discriminating.
That's almost where it's at the point now, where it's if that's what you really want to make it, if that's how you really want to make it equal, because otherwise you're making an argument that it's gonna fall apart,
Yeah, because it's more. That's why he clarified. He said it doesn't matter. That doesn't even matter.
Exactly.
It's more about, do you value the animal's life over the human taste bud? Mm-hmm. So it's not about animal's life versus human life, because we're not killing and eating humans. So that's not a fair comparison. It's, does the animal's life justify that taste that it gives you?
Yeah.
And can you get that taste elsewhere? Do you have to eat that? The answer is no, right?
Yeah.
They don't have to.
I'll put it another way. Believe me, if I had to make this decision, I would not have a hard time choosing whether to save a drowning sheep or a drowning human baby. But as I say, that's just not the situation we're in. It's more like choosing between saving a drowning sheep or giving a human child a piece of chocolate that it will enjoy. Which would you choose to do? Save the sheep or give the child the chocolate? I know what I'd do. I'd save the sheep. And I wouldn't save the sheep because I value the sheep more than I do the human. I'd save the sheep because I value its life over a transient moment of sensory pleasure for the human. It's not about whether we value animals as much as humans. It's about whether we value animals as much as human taste buds. And in a world where human taste buds can be just as easily appeased by plant-based alternatives as they can by meat. We no longer live in a world that requires meat consumption to sustain even our health, let alone our lives. We can get by easily without meat. I mean, really, do you really think that the reason people still eat meat is because they just need it to survive? Of course not. It's because it tastes nice. That's it. So this whole discussion surrounding whether or not animals are of equal worth to human beings is a red herring, because the real contrast isn't between the life of animals and the life of humans, it's between the life of animals and the taste buds of humans. So to conclude, even if we are superior to other animals in terms of intelligence or capacity for pain or whatever it may be, even if we're not equal, even if we don't have the same moral worth, the meat industry is still morally bankrupt. Clearly, our tastes shouldn't be discounted entirely. There are many things in the world with less moral worth than our taste buds. But the life and suffering of factory-farmed sentient beings is not one of them. Show me the quality that these beings lack, that if a human lacked, we'd shove such humans into tiny cages and grow them so fat that they're crippled by their own weight, and forcibly impregnate them and remove the subsequent child and sell the mother to a slaughterhouse, and you might have the ghost of a justification for eating meat. Besides that, I just don't see it.
All right, so we have the conclusion. So one of his biggest questions that Alex had asked is can anyone find a good reason to be eating meat after the justifications that he pretty much squashed, right? So people are going to answer in the comments on his page, and people will answer in the comments on mine. I want to answer that same question. Since we have, someone right here, can you find any reasons after watching that, to answer his question?
It seems like right off the bat is I just wanted to be honest with myself and say, hey, I'm not going to be blinded by the idea that I love the taste of bacon. I love the taste of meat. Like, if I can be honest with that and say, like, if I can admit that that is one of the strongest arguments that I can lay down and say that is still there, then I think we can all also admit that we shouldn't be blinded by the idea that we think there's a separation or all these other things that we just kind of ran into. It seems like you have to be honest with yourself. The idea that that's really, it's becoming like more and more, like we're becoming more close to reality, like with so many things, that this just happens to be one of them. There's another great example of something we just need to be more in touch with, like the reality of it. Like, you and who your subconscious is. Like, yourself really well. And no, maybe I haven't put up the best arguments for why, there is reasons for meeting. But I think it's because I've been force-fed these reasons that I don't want to have to fucking put up the argument anymore, man. I feel like the argument's been there and laid out for me. Someone else needs to bring an argument the other way now. It's almost like, yeah, I'm ready for that. It's like, shouldn't there be? Aren't we all ready for something to kind of rock the boat a little bit? And honestly, it's not even like that much of a rock of the boat. It's almost like, what the hell kind of ship was I riding on before? Like, it's like, just be honest with yourself, when it really comes down to it. And you know what? Sure, I will be completely open to whatever comments we have, because I really hope that there is something that's like, helps make me feel like less of a sheep who is like following a herd, please. and I'm sure there is at least a reason for why we do what we do, but there's as far as like this, like morality goes, it just seems so arbitrary. So like, you can't put your finger on it. Don't even, and I'm not saying don't even try, because I really am trying. These thought experiments are great. I'm all about it. I want to do more of them,
Well, I think it just goes to show that that you have to ask these questions, and you have to keep asking, and you have to keep searching. You know what I mean? Like, this might be just the first time that you encounter, information like this. It doesn't mean that there might be information that's counterintuitive, or counter, like the opposite of what you're finding. And it doesn't mean there's more information that could even lead you down that right path. And I think that's why I like Alex so much, is that he really tries to be very objective, in his opinions and his beliefs and his logic, and he brings up very good points and very good analogies. So thank you very much, Alex. I hope you get a chance to watch this. I'm a huge fan, Cosmic Skeptic. Come on the podcast. Please support me on Patreon. I do have a Patreon. I'm going to leave a link in the Patreon. Check out the videos. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and hit that bell. Thank you, guys.
All right.
See you on the next episode.